الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Amma ba'd, respected scholars, elders, brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, tonight as we celebrate the birth anniversary of our beloved lady Sayeddah Zaynab alayhi afdal as-salati was-salam, this woman that embodies the manifestation of patience, the manifestation of mannerism, the manifestation of that which she showed in Karbala, and we realized the morals that are installed in such a lady. And we are yet to understand this character which is Sayeddah Zaynab. And there's yet to be learnt. However, we try to take tonight, inshallah, to realize how she became who she became. How Zaynab achieved this rank. What were the steps or the stepping stones into becoming this particular pulpit of perfection, which is Sayeddah Zaynab. And inshallah, tonight's topic will revolve around the idea of role models. Who to look up to, what to follow, what not to follow, inshallah. We'd want to look at Sayeddah Zaynab in 4 different aspects. The first, we'd like to look at the importance of having a role model and the importance of choosing your role models wisely. And what are the side effects of choosing wrong role models? On the second level, we'd like to look at the number 1 role model in Sayeddah Zaynab's life, which is Sayyidah Fatima alayhi afdal as-salati was-salam. On the third level, we want to see how that her father Ali ibn Abi Talib can be a role model to her. Because when we talk about Sayyidah Zaynab, many of the brothers might think that Sayyidah Zaynab is only a guidance for the ladies. Sayyidah Zaynab is only a beacon of light for the idea of hijab for the ladies. However, we will realize how much we are able to learn as men, to think to ourselves that would we stand that stance that Zaynab took. Because I guarantee myself that no way no one can actually stand that stance that Sayyidah Zaynab took. Not only in Karbala, but in the courtrooms of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad and Yazid. Now let's look at the life of Sayyidah Zaynab. What is the importance of choosing a wise role model, brothers and sisters? Because nowadays when we look at it, on an average boy or a girl, we look at the posters that are hung in their room. Whether it be soccer players, whether it be pop stars, whatever it may be. People, you come for them and you say to them, for example, why is it that you look up to this particular person? Because when you look up to someone, that's the peak in which you can reach, isn't it? When you look up towards a pop star, you think, well, he is a pop star, he achieved fame committing haram, and they look up to them. Now, obviously, if you look up to someone that has haram, even if they think that they have good aspects, whether they give charity, whether they help people, look at their good aspects, not a problem, but don't look at them as a role model. Because if you look at them as a role model, you will look at their what? Their faults. Once you look at their faults, you begin to say to yourself that because my role model has these faults, then it's okay for myself to have these faults. That's why in other schools of Islam, or other schools of thought, in Islam, when they come forth and we say that this companion committed this particular act of haram, this particular companion committed this act of blasphemy, they reply with what? Do not judge them, for they are the companions. Then what? If the companions, so-called, commit this particular act of treason, if the companions do this particular act of haram, then why is it that we begin to question these people that follow these particular ideologies? Obviously, if you follow someone, their faults, if you look up to them, will become yours. That's why Islam, the school of Ahlul Bayt, is the school of perfection. Because our role models is what? Our role models are infallible. Our role models are the Prophet of Islam. Our role models are Ali ibn Abi Talib, Fatima al-Zahra, Sayyidah Zaynab. Because they're infallible, you cannot question when you act in a way which displeases Allah, that you can come forth and say, well, my role models will act in such a manner. What's an example of this? Let's look at the examples of the people that lived in the life of the prophets, such as Salman. Let's look at what degree Salman reached, brothers and sisters. When Salman, the Prophet of Islam, what does he state? And we all know the hadith in which the Prophet states, Salmanun minna. We don't call him Salman al-Farisi. The Prophet says what? He says, say Salman al-Muhammadi, because Salman is one of us, Ahlul Bayt. In another narration he says what? He says, Salman Luqman hadhihi al-Ummah. And then he says to one of the companions, if only you knew what is in the heart of Salman, you would call him an infidel. You will try and go and kill him. Because what? Because you cannot comprehend the level in which Salman has reached, because he has been in the footsteps of Ahlul Bayt. When Abu Dhar goes to the Prophet and he says what? He says, O Prophet of Islam, why are there ranks amongst the Sahaba? And how can I achieve a greater rank than what I have now? What is the reply of the Prophet? He says, go outside and look at what Salman is doing. Look at the actions of Salman, and then you will realize why there are levels between the Sahaba and how you may attain such a high level. He goes outside. Abu Dhar looks, he sees Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ali ibn Abi Talib comes past. Who does he see after him? He says Salman. But Salman is walking in a manner which he finds very weird at the time. He sees Salman walking very awkwardly. When Salman comes towards Abu Dhar, he begins to ask him. He says, Abu Dhar, what is it? He says, Salman, what are you doing? Why are you walking in this awkward manner? He says, do you see the floor? He says, yes. He says, what do you see? He says, I see traces of the remains of where Ali ibn Abi Talib left his footprints. He says, exactly. He says, what are you doing? He says, I am tracing wherever Ali ibn Abi Talib put his right foot, I would place mine. Wherever Ali ibn Abi Talib would place his left foot, I would place mine. Sallu ala Muhammad wa in a manner of what? Instilling the idea to follow their footsteps in another level altogether. Now someone may come forth and say that Salman was one of the Mu'ammareen, one of the old people, one of the oldest companions of the Prophet. What does it apply to us? I give you an example of another of the companions. I want to give an example of the smallest daughter of his. And what level, if this daughter can reach this level, then none of us here today have an excuse, brothers and sisters. Now this I have said on many occasions, but inshallah I'd repeat this to understand the idea of such a young age, yet they can learn so much. A companion of Ali ibn Abi Talib in the Khilafah of Muawiyah at the time. Muawiyah, what does he do to gain followers? He used to put honey at the doorsteps of the companions of Ali ibn Abi Talib to try to get them towards the side of Muawiyah. And not any honey, brothers and sisters, because at the state of famine that the companions of Ali ibn Abi Talib were in, you can imagine that honey was hard to come by. Imagine honey that had saffron inside, brothers and sisters. This young girl, the narration says, did not even go over the 6th year. She's not even 6 years of age. She opens the door and she finds this jar of honey that had saffron inside. So she opens it and she begins to taste. She takes one finger and she tastes this particular honey. And she says, oh my goodness, what's a beautiful taste. Then the father sees it. Look at the connection with the father and the daughter. What does he tell the daughter? He says, daughter, do you know who this honey is from? The daughter replies, no, father, I do not. He begins to say, this honey is from Muawiyah. What does this daughter do? Look at this aspect, brothers and sisters, because it is much deeper than we begin to realize on the first level. This daughter begins to put her finger to the end of her mouth until she begins to vomit that which she just ate. So all the honey is taken out of her system. All that is haram is taken out of her system. Then she turns her face towards Syria, towards Damascus. And she says these two lines, brothers and sisters. I want you to realize these two lines. And if you speak Arabic, you will analyze these lines in depth, brothers and sisters. She looks towards Muawiyah and she says what? She says, oh Muawiyah, أبل عسل المزعفر يا ابن هند نبيع لك إيمانا ودينا فلا والله لا يكون ذاك ومولانا أمير المؤمنين. This 6-year-old girl looks towards Muawiyah and says, is it with honey that we give up our allegiance towards Imam Ali? She says, not a shadow of doubt, there is no way when our Mawla is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Not a manner. This is 6 years of age, brothers and sisters. 6 years. So no one can say at an old age that we cannot have role models. And no one can say at a young age we cannot have role models. And the role models are those people that what? That allow us to create our character. And an analogy that's given, a father and son have an argument and a debate. The father tells the son, he says, oh son, he says, what do you want to achieve? Who do you want to be like when you grow older? Now this father was a pious man. He'd reached very high ranks within the education system and religious perspectives. So the son looks at his father, what does he say? He says, oh father, when I grow up, I would love it if I was to be like you. The father says what? He looks at him and smiles. He says, surely my son, you will never reach my rank. Now the son's thinking to himself, why is it that my father is saying this? He says, why is it that I can never attain your rank, O father? He says, oh my son, when I wanted to follow someone, I followed Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says, and I fell short, and I am the man I am today. When you try to follow me as the end goal, surely you will even fall short of me. Giving you the idea that what? That when you have role models, make sure you aim for the highest star in the galaxy. You aim for the Prophet of Islam. You aim for Ali ibn Abi Talib. You aim for Fatima al-Zahra. The highest of the high. Because if you fall short, brothers and sisters, imagine what you will become if you have them as role models. Let's look at the role models of Sayyidah Zaynab. The second point for tonight. The role models which were first and foremost the Lady of Light, Fatima al-Zahra. When she is growing up, brothers and sisters, imagine the mother that Fatima al-Zahra is. If the Prophet of Islam says that Fatima ummi abiha, imagine what kind of mother she was to her children. Imagine. When Fatima al-Zahra has in her midst Sayyidah Zaynab, and she begins to realize that Fatima al-Zahra would never miss night prayers. Does it surprise you that on the 11th of Muharram, after the tragedy of Karbala happened, that Sayyidah Zaynab, even though she was what? She was weak from all the calamities. And Imam Zayn al-Abidin narrates, he says, I saw my auntie Zaynab praying, but it wasn't her normal prayers. She wasn't up with her strength. She was on her knees on the floor. She was praying while she was seated. And I asked her, why is it that you do this, oh my auntie? And she says, I have no strength to stand. She has no strength to stand, brothers and sisters. Yet what? We see that which her mother instilled in her, the night prayers, is continued. That's the effect of her mother on her. And another narration, when the Prophet of Islam goes towards Fatima al-Zahra, and I want you to really concentrate in this particular narration because it takes the idea and the concept of hijab to an entirely new perspective. If you want to look at this particular idea of hijab, your whole concept will be blown out of the window, because I want you to realize the wording of Fatima al-Zahra. The Prophet of Islam comes towards the house of Fatima and he knocks the door. The Prophet of Islam knocks the door. But people, a couple of years after, but that's for another night, inshallah, brothers and sisters. The Prophet knocks the door and he says, oh Fatima, do you permit me to enter your premises? She says, oh father, this is your house. Of course you may enter. He says, Ana wa man ma'i. He says, me and that who is with me. She says, who is with you, O father? He says, Abdullah ibn Maktoum, which was a blind man. A blind man. Keep this in mind. Abdullah was a blind man. She says, no, father. Await me and I will return and I will allow you to enter. So she goes and she wears the full attire, the full hijab. She comes and then she sits in the corner of the room and she says, "Oh father, you may enter." Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam enters with Abdullah ibn Maktoum. What happens then? He leaves and then he asks Fatima. He says, "Oh Fatima, he is a blind man. Why is it that you wear the full attire?" Look at the reply of Fatima al-Zahra. This is why you will realize when we talk about modesty, when we talk about hijab, when we talk about the height of mannerisms, Sayyidah Zaynab is mentioned. Look at the reply of Fatima. Fatima al-Zahra replies by saying what? She says, "Father, even though he is a blind man, he cannot see me, but I can still see him. The level of comfort that I have when I am not wearing hijab and a man is in the room. Secondly, I am wearing hijab. He is a blind man. Can he not smell me?" Look at the reply of Fatima al-Zahra. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Sayyidah Zaynab grew up in this atmosphere, brothers and sisters. At 4 years of age, in a narration, 4 years of age, when Fatima al-Zahra spoke out against the oppressors, when she went, and if anyone would like to go out and look at the Fadak, Khutbat al-Fadakiyya, if you want to go look at basically the speech of Fatima al-Zahra about the rights of Fadak, you will realize how long this particular speech is. Imagine one of the narrators for this speech was Sayyidah Zaynab at 4 years of age. 4 years of age, she remembers the speech of her mother in that particular stance. We find nowadays, you say, yes, we have children that are 5 years of age that know the whole Quran off by heart. But I ask you, how many times did they have to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it? Sayyidah Zaynab, once she hears her mother on the pulpit and she learns the entire speech. Imagine what kind of lady Sayyidah Zaynab was. Imagine why Imam Zayn al-Abidin refers to her as what? عالمة غير معلمة. A person that has what? Has intelligence, has the education, but was not educated. Meaning what? That her teacher was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imagine that, brothers and sisters. Her mother's side, I have a few more points, but inshallah we're running out of time. I want to move on. So we want to look at the final factor, which is the visionary. Sayyidah Zaynab and the vision that she had in Karbala. And we want to realize what kind of lady she was. In the reign of her father, what can a lady learn from her father? What can't she learn from Ali ibn Abi Talib is the question. When she is in the reign of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Ali takes her aside. Young age. And he tells her, "Oh Zaynab," look at Zaynab. He says, "Zaynab, say one." She says, "One." Then she goes on and says, "Well done, my daughter. Now say two." Sayyidah Zaynab refuses. He says, "Bunayya, say two." Again she refuses. Then Imam says what? He says, "Why is it, O Zaynab, you do not want to utter two?" Look at the reply of Sayyidah Zaynab at this young age, and you'll begin to realize, and you begin to have salvation in your heart that says what? That now I know this lady, and the action that she had on the 10th of Muharram befits. She replies, "Oh Father, how is it that the tongue that utters the oneness of God can utter the number two?" Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Sayyidah Zaynab, at a young age, عالمة غير معلمة. Imam Ali alayhi afdal salati was salam. I want to give you an analogy and an example of how much her shadow was sacred to the Hawashim, to the Fatimiyat, that her bare shadow was so sacred. And why Imam Sahib al-Asri was Zaman until today, we realize that he says, لَأَبْكِيَنَّ عَلَيْكَ بَدَلَ الدُّمُوعِ دَمًا. Imam Ali alayhi afdal salati was salam when he used to go out of the house at night, he would have Hassan and Hussein on either side of Zaynab, him in front, and Abu Fadl al-Abbas behind. So that's what? So no one can see her shadow. Not her figure, her shadow. The candle that was lit with Ali ibn Abi Talib, he would extinguish it in case they see her shadow. When Sayyidah Zaynab, in a poem that's written, inshallah, all those that are Arabic speaking can relate to this poem. It is quite famous when she talks to the guide of the caravan. When they were going back towards Kufa, she begins to tell him of the upbringing of Ali ibn Abi Talib. She says to the guide of the caravan, she says, يا حادي شسولف لك يا حادي الضعن يوم الجنت بالكوفة وابوي على البشر سلطان بيامه المعروفة من يجبل علينا العيد تحب الوادم جفوفه ويقولوا له نسانة تريد تعايد زينب بهالعيد تحب منها الجدم والإيد منك نطلب الرخصة يا علي وابويا الفحل ما يرضى نساهم يعايدني خافا للزلم يرحن ويحشن من يشوفني. She's telling him what's in this particular line of poetry. She says, "O guides, shall I tell you of the times of my father Ali? The times in which the people in the day of Eid would come towards him as Khalifa and beg him, after kissing his hands, may our woman go and see Sayyidah Zaynab, to say Eid Mubarak, to congratulate her on this event, and Ali ibn Abi Talib would not allow it. Why? Why would he not allow it? He says, I am afraid that the woman would come and see your figure, would see the attributes that you have, and they go towards their gatherings and they will release that which they know about your attributes." Imagine Ali ibn Abi Talib. Sayyidah Zaynab had such a high status in Ali ibn Abi Talib's eyes and in the family of the Prophet that when Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais came to propose to Sayyidah Zaynab, this, when I came across this particular narration, it absolutely struck me, because Ali ibn Abi Talib's reply was one that I've never heard on the pulpits. When Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais comes towards Ali ibn Abi Talib, he says, "Oh Ali, I would like to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage." Look at the reply of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says, لَقَدْ جَرَّأَكَ ibn Abi Quhafa. He says, surely, Ibn Abi Quhafa, referring to Abu Bakr, he says, surely he has equipped you with the audacity to come and ask for my daughter's hand. He says, أعلم فإنها ليس من الفواطم ولا الطالبين إنها فخر المخدرات وعقيلة الطالبين. Then he goes on to say what? He says, وإن ذكرتها على لسانك لقطعته. Ali ibn Abi Talib saying to Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais, if you but utter her name on your tongue, I will cut it for you. Imagine the position of Sayyidah Zaynab. Imagine, because of this reply of Ali ibn Abi Talib, what kind of position Sayyidah Zaynab holds. I want to leave it with you. There's no need for explanation further. When Ali ibn Abi Talib says the line in which I will cut this tongue of yours, O Ash'ath ibn Qais, if you but utter her name on your tongue. Imagine. Now moving on, let's see what this installed. The combination of Fatima al-Zahra and Ali ibn Abi Talib made this particular person, which is Sayyidah Zaynab. And an ending note, inshaAllah. I want to make you realize the visionary, which is Sayyidah Zaynab. And I end on this note, brothers and sisters, because when we have the sons, which are Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, because someone may come forth and state that some of the sons of Ali ibn Abi Talib also had this position. I want to take you back towards Siffin, When Ali ibn Abi Talib gives the banner towards Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, one of his sons, he says, take the banner and go towards the battlefield. And Siffin was a vicious war, brothers and sisters. Lasted for many months. Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah goes towards the battlefield. He sees the arrows. The narration says, as if it was raining. And he comes back. He says, oh Ali, I cannot. Oh father, I cannot. He says, go again, oh son. He goes, then he hesitates, then he comes back. Ali ibn Abi Talib takes the banner off him. He says, what? He says, فِيكَ عِرْقٌ مِّنْ أُمِّكَ. He says, you have a gene from your mother. This fear that you have is not from me. He gives it to Imam Hassan alayhi afdal salati wassalam, and he says, go towards the battlefield. Without hesitation, he goes towards the battlefield. And the narration says it's as if he was a lion on the battlefield. Ali ibn Abi Talib says what? He says that's the difference between the sons and daughters of Fatima al-Zahra and the rest. Sallu ala Muhammad wa alim. Now, how was Sayyidah Zaynab a visionary on the 10th of Muharram? She had her upbringing, she had her role models. How was she a visionary on the 10th of Muharram? How can we say that today, that Sayyidah Zaynab, all those years ago, 1436 years ago, had the vision that Ashura would be instilled today? How do we know this? Number one, we have the very famous hadith and the speech that she said, the sermon in which she says, and I stated in the start of the talk for tonight, فكد كيدك واسعى سعيك وناصب جهدك فوالله لا تمحو ذكرنا ولا تميت وحينا. Sayyidah Zaynab uses the name of Allah because the Ahlul Bayt, they never use the word of Allah. They never bring the word of Allah down except in important occasions. When she says, فَوَاللَّهِ لَا تَمْحُوا ذِكْرَنَا. Did she or did she not have a vision? Did she or did she not have a vision? In another narration, brothers and sisters, and this one I guarantee most of us here tonight have not heard of, have not come across, because I have only come across it only a couple of months ago. And when I read this, I began to realize that Sayyidah Zaynab is beyond comprehension. And the vision that she had was also beyond comprehension. She says to Imam Zayn al-Abidin, look at this particular line that she says, and then you'll begin to realize what Sayyidah Zaynab knew. She finds Imam Zayn al-Abidin in a state of sadness. That's very harsh on himself. And who wouldn't be after the calamity of Karbala? Look at what Sayyidah Zaynab says towards Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Analyze every single letter that she says. She says to Zayn al-Abidin, مَا لِي أَرَاكَ تَجُودُ بِنَفْسِكَ يَا بَقِيَّةَ أَهْلِي فَوَاللَّهِ إِنَّهُ عَهْدٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِجَدِّكَ وَأَبِيكَ وَسَيُنصَبْ عَلَمٌ فِي الطَّفْ لِأَبِيكَ وَلَا يَجْتَمِعَنَّ أَئِمَّةَ الْكُفْرِ وَأَشْيَاعِ الضَّلَالِ على محيه وتطميسه فلا يزداد إلا علوا. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Sayyidah Zaynab states to Imam Zayn al-Abidin, she says, why is it that I see you in this particular state? Oh, that which has remained of my household. Know for sure that this is a covenant between Allah, your father, and your grandfather. And there will be a flag that will be installed for your father Hussein in Karbala, that the tyrants will come together and try to erase and eradicate. However, know for certain that it will not be eradicated, rather it will only elevate in rank. Imagine that, brothers and sisters. This is Sayyidah Zaynab. Inshallah, I've gone over my time. I thank you for your patience, but I want to end in this particular factor in which saying that we can take Sayyidah Zaynab and put it into our lives here today, whether it be male, whether it be female. Whether it be female, look at Zaynab's hijab. Look at Zaynab's sabr. Look at Zaynab's mannerisms. Look at her sacrifice. And also for the men, look at Sayyidah Zaynab's patience. Look at her morals. Look at the religion that she showed. Even on the 11th of Muharram, she still prays. Not just the wajib, but the mustahab prayers. Look at the relation she had with her brother, with her mother, with her father. Let's try to put Sayyidah Zaynab into our lives from today, brothers and sisters. And inshallah, we can make a dua all together, inshallah, for Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. And end on this note, brothers and sisters. So all together, inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء Ya Allah, بحق محمد وآل Muhammad, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make mercy on the souls that have passed, inshaAllah, those that are deceased, and may Allah have mercy on us for the days to come and write us amongst the soldiers of Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, and resurrect us of the muwalin to Ali ibn Abi Talib ببركة سورة الفاتحة تسبقها الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.